Hello everyone, welcome to online module number 5 for ManEc/Fin 453. Today we're going to be talking about the basics of the discounted cash flows model. Before we get into the meat and the nuts and bolts of the assignment, let's just remind ourselves of what the map looks like for these online modules. You can see that today we're doing just what I'm calling a DCF primer, and we're just going to build a very basic DCF model. And let's remind ourselves again of what the Excel training and review objectives are. You can see them right here. Today, all we're going to be doing is basic Excel functionality. We will, however, be building up over the next couple of modules to Monte Carlo simulation, so that's on the horizon, and today is considered a building block leading up to that. Our goals for module number 5 are simple. We just want to review the basics of how to execute firm-level discounted cash flows analysis, and then we want to build a very basic but dynamic discounted cash flows model that we will build on over the next 1 or 2 modules. So let's just remind ourselves of some fundamental principles related to valuation. First, the value of any asset should be a function of the utility that it offers. Secondly, financial assets offer a single form of utility, specifically future cash flows. Therefore, the value of a financial asset should be the sum of the present value of all the expected future cash flows. Speaking of those future cash flows, we believe that free cash flows to the firm are ideal because they represent cash flows that are actually generated by the firm, that are available to be distributed to stakeholders, and further, free cash flows to the firm are much more difficult to manipulate than, say, earnings or dividends. There are other valuation models based on earnings, based on dividends, but for a lot of reasons we prefer free cash flows to the firm because they're less easily manipulated by managers. So let's go straight to the formula. I know that you have all been exposed to discounted cash flows analysis in previous classes, so I assume everything we're talking about here is review, at least on the finance side. So remember, the discounted cash flows model says simply, if you want to know the current value of an asset, so I'm representing the current value using P0, so the price right now of an asset should be all of the future cash flows discounted back. And when you do that, when you map out all of the free cash flows to the firm and you discount them back, then that gives you enterprise value, because remember, free cash flows to the firm are cash flows that are free to be distributed to shareholders and creditors. So if you calculate the value of a firm using free cash flows to the firm, what you've calculated is the value of both the equity and the debt. So in order to get just the value of equity, which is what we're interested in, you have to actually subtract out the value of debt at the end. Now, one little note here. Now, I'm assuming that nobody has problems with this part of the formula. For instance, you take the first free cash flow, discount it back 1 period. Second free cash flow, discount it back 2 periods. Third free cash flow, discount it back 3 periods, so on. However, I worry that maybe a few of you don't quite remember exactly what's going on out here. Let me try to explain that to you a little bit. You have to make an assumption that at some point this company reaches steady state. And I call that the terminal period, and I represent that with a capital T. The assumption you have to make is that at some point, so you hit this terminal period, and from that point forward we make the assumption that free cash flows to the firm either are constant or grow at a constant rate. If you make that assumption, then right here at the end of period capital T, if you look at all of the future cash flows after that, what you see is a perpetuity. So let's remind ourselves. We know from previous classes that the present value of a perpetuity at time 0 is calculated by taking the cash flows in the first period divided by the discount rate minus the steady state growth rate. The key there is the present value right now involves the cash flow in the next period. So what we can do in this formula up here is we can assume if free cash flows to the firm are growing at a constant rate from this point forward, then standing at the end of period capital T, the terminal period, we can calculate the present value of all of these remaining cash flows as if they are a perpetuity. How would you do that? Well, if we want to get the present value of those cash flows at the end of period capital T, then we need the cash flows from the next period, T plus 1, divide that by R minus G, and again that gives us the present value at the end of period capital T of all of the rest of the free cash flows to the firm. So that's the denominator. The denominator is the present value at the end of period T of all of the remaining free cash flows to the firm. Of course, since that present value was calculated at the end of period capital T, we have to discount it back T periods, which is what's going on here in the denominator. So that right there represents enterprise value. We subtract out debt, and that should give us the value of equity. Further, most people agree that the discount rate in a discounted cash flows model should be the WACC, the weighted average cost of capital. Generally speaking, the way that we calculate the weighted average cost of capital, assuming there's no material preferred stock, is to simply take the value of debt over the total value of the firm, multiply it by the cost of debt times 1 minus the marginal tax rate, and we add to that the value of equity over the total value of the firm times the cost of equity. And oftentimes people use the capital asset pricing model to estimate the cost of equity, and so they use the risk-free rate plus the beta of the firm times the equity risk premium, which is also the expected return on the market minus the risk-free rate. Now, just a few important reminders about the discounted cash flows model. First off, when estimating fundamental value, we never calculate fundamental value, you estimate it. The reason for that is because we're using uncertain inputs, and since there's uncertainty in the inputs, we know we'll never get the quote right answer. We're estimating the fundamental value. It goes without saying that the output of any model is only as useful as the quality of the inputs, so we need to care about the quality of the inputs. Now, today's assignment is not going to focus on the quality of the inputs. Today's assignment is just building the model. The next module will focus on the quality of the inputs. And I would remind you of a famous statement by George Box, who said, quote, essentially all models are wrong, but some are useful. Also remember that forecasting cash flows is absolutely critical in the discounted cash flows model. I told you at the beginning of these modules we were going to shortcut some important things for the sake of time. This is one of those things we're going to shortcut, but you should have learned in previous classes how to effectively forecast cash flows. Also remember, slight changes to the following variables can have a massive impact on the output, specifically the discount rate and the steady state growth rate. So essentially, discount rate, steady state growth rate, and forecasted cash flows, those are your critical inputs. If those are off, then you can't trust the output from the model. Now, the deliverables today are going to be relatively simple. All I'm going to have you do today is basically build this table right here. This is one of the few times throughout the semester I want your deliverable to look essentially like my deliverable. So this is the one time where what you turn in should look exactly like what I put in front of you today. You don't need to worry about all these important user notes. Those are going to factor in the next module, and we'll worry about all these inputs in the next module. For now, we're going to take the inputs as a given, and we're just going to build this model. Let me try to, however, demonstrate to you how I want this to be dynamic. So let me show you the vision for how I hope this will play out. What we want to build up to is a discounted cash flows model that's incredibly dynamic. All of these inputs over here, except for those highlighted in yellow, will be automatically scraped from the web for us, so we won't have to do any digging. And the only thing that you'll have to manually type in is the yellow. But if you change the yellow, I want this table to change accordingly. For instance, right now, I have 5 years until this firm reaches steady state. I want you to be able to change that to, say, 8 years, and I want to see something happen over here. I want this to be dynamic. So you can see that in my model, I put in 8, and this automatically expands out to incorporate the change in the input. So what we're building up to is a super dynamic model that will accordion out and in when we want it to, and it will scrape the web to bring all of these inputs into our model. But today, our goal is solely to build this table over here and make it dynamic. So let me just remind you of the functionality we want to see here. If I reduce the years to steady state, it pulls back like so. That's the functionality we want to see today. And as we're going through it, I'll talk a little bit about the inputs, but not much. So I'm going to start with a spreadsheet that looks like this. I assume that you can all type in and format no problem. So I want to begin right away with trying to make it so that we have this dynamic spreadsheet where, if you look at it, I only want to see the years that we need in the analysis. And the years that we need in the analysis, if you remember right, is we need all of the years up to the terminal period, and we need 1 year after the terminal period. That's all I want to see. I don't want to see anything more or less than that. So we want to just build a formula right here that will show us the year if we need the year. Here's how the formula will work to make that happen. Right here, it's very easy. We just take year 0, and by the way, year 0 will be the last year for which we have audited financial statements, and we add 1 to that. But from this point forward, we need to use some if-then statements, and here's how the if-then statement is going to work. We're going to say, first off, if this previous year is blank, and the way that you say blank in Excel is just 2 quotation marks, if the previous year is blank, then that means we are outside of the analysis period. So that would mean we obviously don't want to see a year here if the previous year is blank. However, what if the previous year is not blank? Then what we want to do is a nested if-then statement. And we want to say, well, if that year plus 1 is less than or equal to year 0 plus the years to steady state plus 1, because remember, we need 1 more year after the terminal period. So if we take the previous year, add 1 to it, and if that is less than or equal to the terminal period plus 1, then we want to see the year. We want to see E5 plus 1. However, if that's not true, that means we have exceeded the analysis period and we don't want to see a year. Close up all the necessary parentheses, hit the enter button, and by the way, I want to be able to slide this formula out. I don't want to have to retype it. So let's look at what we need to lock in. You can see that anything in the B column we're going to want to lock in. So anywhere we see a B, we want to put a $sign in front of that B. Okay, that should work. Now, I would like your models to be able to handle 20 years to steady state. Now, I don't want anybody to be alarmed. I'm not suggesting that we can in any way forecast accurately 20 years into the future. But I do think it's the case that there are certain companies that are experiencing tremendous growth right now, and it may take them a prolonged period of time to settle into their steady state. So let's make it so that our model can handle 20 years. So we take this formula in F5 and we drag it out as far as we need to make sure that we can handle 20 years. And you can see right there, 2032. Now it's easy to check this, so just pull it back to 7 and you'll see that's year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then there's the 1 extra that we need. Great. Now that we have that, we're ready to move forward. Now we want to get the growth rate. Now, for my purposes, I'm going to shortcut this in a lot of ways. Here's the shortcut that I'm going to take. Now, I want to remind you, I'm doing a shortcut. Here's the reminder. Forecasting cash flows is critical. Here's the shortcut that I'm going to take. We're going to calculate, and I'll show you next module how to do this. We're going to calculate the free cash flows to the firm in the most recent year for which we have audited financial statements. That's year 0. For ExxonMobil, they had free cash flows to the firm in 2011 of $24.7 billion. What we're going to do is we're simply going to grow that cash flow out until we hit steady state. And how we're going to grow it is we're going to have an initial starting growth rate, and then we're going to have a steady state growth rate. So the first year, the growth rate is going to be that right there. And then by the time we hit steady state, it's going to hit steady state growth rate. And then all we're going to do is from the year 1 growth rate to the steady state growth rate, we're just going to monotonically, which means gradually change from the beginning to the steady state growth rate. So for the growth rate, the starting growth rate is just going to be 1%, this initial growth rate. And again, we're just going to take the inputs as a given. I'll show you next module exactly how I got those inputs, but for now, just take it as a given. So there's our starting growth rate. And then we're going to have an ending growth rate out here that we know is going to be 2.86. And what we want to do is we want to just gradually build up to that. Let me talk to you about logic for just a second. We need to go from 1% to 2.86%. And if you think about it, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years to get there. So we have 7 years to steady state. What that means is we need to travel a distance of 1.86%. That's how far we need to go, and we have 7 years to get there. So that means every year our growth rate needs to increase at a rate of about 27 basis points. So here's how we're going to do it. We're going to say, first off, if the year equals nothing, then we don't want a growth rate. That means we're outside of the analysis period. However, if there is a growth rate, then we just want to take the previous growth rate and we want to add 27 basis points. But how did we get the 27 basis points? This is how we got it. You want to take steady state growth rate minus year one growth rate divided by however many years we have to get there. Now again, we need to lock in any of the B's that we see and make sure that it's formatted correctly. Okay. Stretch it out, and you can see that in fact we gradually go from 1% to 2.8%. Now again, I want your model to be able to capture 20 years, so let's go ahead and send that all the way out as far as we need to, like so, and then we can pull it back to 7 so we can see it a little more clearly. Okay, so now to get free cash flows, all we're going to do is every year we're just going to grow the previous year's free cash flows at whatever our growth rate is. So in this first period, we're just going to take free cash flows and multiply it by 1 plus the growth rate. Every period after that, we're just going to use our simple if-then statement. If the year equals nothing, give me nothing, because that means we're outside of the analysis period. Otherwise, take the previous year's free cash flow to the firm, multiply it by 1 plus our growth rate this year, and the good news is we don't have to lock anything in with that. So let's go ahead and make sure we can handle 20 years. So we just copy and paste that across as far as we need to. All right, terminal price. Now, we only want a terminal price. Terminal price, by the way, for those of you that aren't familiar with the nomenclature, terminal price is this right here in the numerator. It is the present value as of the end of period capital T of all of the subsequent estimated free cash flows to the firm. It's literally just the numerator right here. We only want a terminal price in the terminal period. So if we're in the terminal period, what we want to do is we want to take the next period's free cash flow and divide it by R minus G. So what I'm going to do is this. You may not understand this initially, but you will at the end. What I'm going to do is this. I'm going to say if that year is less than year 0 plus years to steady state, then I'm just going to put a flag, and you'll see why. Otherwise, if the year actually equals year 0 plus years to steady state, then I want to take the free cash flows in the next period and divide it by the difference between my discount rate and my steady state growth rate. Now, what if that's not true, though? So let's look at our formula for a second. We've said if the year is less than the terminal period, flag it. If it equals the terminal period, calculate a terminal price. If it's not less than or equal to the terminal year, then we don't want to see anything. So we do that, and we close up all the parentheses. Now, you need to lock in a lot of B's here, so get ready with your dollar sign. Lock in all the B's, and send it out as far as you need to. Now, if you did it correctly, you should see flags all the way out until you get a terminal premium or a terminal price, and then you should see nothing after that, which we do. Okay, so here's the great news. Once you get to that point, this assignment is largely done. Let me take you the rest of the way there. To get the forecasted cash flows to the firm, it's very simple. Now look, we've already done forecasted free cash flows. This line is simply the total cash flows. So in almost every period, it will be the exact same as the free cash flows. The only period when that won't hold is when you get out to the terminal period. Because in the terminal period, and let me pull this back a little bit so you can see it more clearly. If we had only 4 years to steady state, then you can see in the terminal period, which is right here, you have not only a free cash flow to the firm, but you also have this terminal price. Those are both cash flows that need to ultimately get discounted back. So let me stretch this back out to 20, and it turns out that the forecasted cash flows are just going to be the sum of the free cash flows in that period and the terminal price. So the easiest thing to do is just this. If the year is less than or equal to year 0 plus years to steady state, then just give me the sum of the forecasted free cash flow and the terminal price. Otherwise, give me nothing. And make sure you lock in any B's. So $ in front of the B's, and then you just copy and paste it all the way out. So you can see it's just the free cash flow to the firm until we finally get out to this terminal period, at which point we're taking the free cash flow plus the terminal price. All right, to get the discount factor is just going to be 1 plus the discount rate raised to the number of periods. Here's the easy way to do it. We say if the year is less than or equal to year 0 plus years to steady state, then what we want to do is take 1 plus our discount rate and raise it to the number of periods. But the way we're going to figure out the number of periods is this. Take the year and subtract year 0. Now the reason we're going to do that is if we do the formula this way, we can actually drag the formula across and we don't have to keep retyping it. What you don't want to do is this. 1 plus B22 raised to the 1. Then you'll have to retype the formula throughout the entire model. But if you do it this way, you won't have to retype it. Remember, lock in the B's. You're getting sick of hearing that. Okay, now also, you need to tell it what to do if this isn't true. In other words, what if that year is not less than or equal to year 0 plus years to steady state? If that's not true, then we don't want to see anything. So we take that, drag it across as far as we need to, like so, and you should be able to see pretty clearly whether or not you're on the right track. We know that our discount rate is 6.895%. So does that look like 1 plus r, 1 plus r squared, 1 plus r cubed? Looks like we're on the right track. So in order to get present value, we just take the cash flows in the period and divide it by the discount factor. If you want to see it mathematically, here is the cash flow, here is the discount factor. We just divide it to get the present value every period. So again, we just do if year is less than or equal to year 0 plus years to steady state, then give me the forecasted cash flows divided by the discount factor. Otherwise, give me nothing. Lock in the B's. And you know the trick at this point. All right, so now we have all of the present values. Now we can calculate enterprise value. Enterprise value is simply the sum of all of the present values. And so right here, we do sum and we take it all the way out as far as our model will go. And there's our enterprise value. In order to get the total value of the equity, we have to subtract out the value of debt. You can see the year 0 value of debt is one of our inputs. Right now, the total value of Exxon's debt is $176.656 billion. So we just go and grab that. So to figure out the implied market cap, in other words, the total value of ExxonMobil's equity according to our discounted cash flows model, we just take enterprise value and we subtract out debt. Now, if you want to get a per share fundamental value, you need to take this total market cap that's implied from our DCF model and divide it by the number of shares outstanding. Now, all of this is scaled. So everything I'm doing here is in millions. For instance, the year 0 free cash flows, that's 24.732 billion. In other words, you have to add 6 zeros. That's why I have this input variable right here, scale on the financial statement. Similarly, shares outstanding is scaled. That's in millions, so there are actually 4.56 billion shares outstanding. So all we have to do is take the implied market cap, divide it by the shares outstanding, and that gets us the $80.17 from our model. Now, to get the current price, we're just going to use our RCH get Yahoo quotes that we've used previously. We're going to click on ExxonMobil, and we want L1. So there's our current fundamental value. That's the actual market price. So what's the estimated mispricing? Well, we are saying that this stock is actually overpriced by $9. So we'll take our fundamental value minus the actual market price. Let's figure it in percentage terms. So let's calculate it as a percentage of the fundamental value. So we think that right now, and turn it into a percent, Right now, the current price of ExxonMobil is $89.10. We think the price should be $80 and roughly 18 cents. That means it's overpriced by 11.13%. Now, you could put in a recommendation. Clearly, for me, that would be a sell. You could do an if-then statement, something like this. If the estimated mispricing is greater than the cost of equity, then we probably want to buy the stock. That means we think we could earn more than the cost of equity by buying this mispriced security. If, however, that is less than the risk-free rate. So what if the mispricing is 2% or less? Clearly, we wouldn't want to buy that. We think we could earn more in the risk-free asset. If that's the case, we would want to sell it. If it's anything else, we would just want to be neutral. So if this expected mispricing is between the risk-free rate and the cost of equity, we'll call it neutral or hold. Close the parenth, make it look like that. All right, now you're essentially done with the assignment. The only thing that's left to do is to format it. Any of these large numbers, we're just going to put them comma separated with no decimals. So let's comma separate those with no decimals. And let's do the same thing with cash flows here, comma separated with no decimals. For the discount factor, let's just make it comma separated with 3 decimals. For the present value, enterprise value, value of debt, implied markup, all of that, let's make it comma separated with no decimals. But then for the fundamental value, let's make that comma separated with 2 decimals. Same thing with the current price. And we've got the mispricing in percentage format like we want it. So let's take everything and center it. So now we've got it nicely formatted numerically. We've got it centered. The last thing I'd like you to do is put some color and some boxes to it just to make it a little bit more readable. Let's do some conditional formatting. Let's put boxes around it like this. Highlight everything that you might want to format. So any cell that might want to be formatted eventually, go to conditional formatting, do a new rule, format only cells that contain no blanks. And how we're going to format them is we're simply going to put a border around them. Click OK, and now we have borders. What that does for you is if you scale this years to steady state to 4, then what you'll see is everything pulls back and you only have boxes around cells that have data. I'm realizing I forgot to format terminal price. Let's do that real quickly. And again, we'll do that comma separated, no decimals. All right, also lastly, let's put some color up here just in the top. So we'll do, again, conditional formatting, new rule, format only cells that contain, again, no blanks, but this time we want to fill it. We want to fill it just with this orange color just to give it a little bit of color and make it pop for us. So now it's looking nice and sharp. We can change the years to steady state and we can see that our model adjusts accordingly. Last thing I want to do is I just want to cover up these cells that we don't need. So right here in terminal price, I'm going to highlight the whole row. I'm going to do one more conditional formatting rule. What we want to do is format only cells that contain a specific text. So format only cells that contain a specific text, and it's going to contain the flag text. And how we want it formatted is we want it to be black. Click OK, OK, and it looks like so. All right, so you can see that what we've done here is we've come up with a nice dynamic model. We can change any of these inputs and the model will be able to handle it. We can move this out to 10 years to steady state, and that's what will happen. We could do 20 years to steady state. We could do 3 years to steady state. And you can see what's nice is everything's changing. We're losing formatting where we don't need it. We're only seeing years that we need in our analysis. These things that shouldn't have any content in them are blacked out to avoid questions. So there is a basic dynamic discounted cash flows model. The next 2 things I want to do with our discounted cash flows model is I want to show you how we can get nice dynamic inputs by scraping the web so that we don't have to go and do a lot of manual inputting on our own. And then lastly, I want to show you how to do Monte Carlo simulation. But we're going to call this good for today's assignment. So let's put the years to steady state at 5 years. Your model should look essentially like mine. The only thing that will be different is you might get a slightly different price because as you update that on a different day, obviously the price of ExxonMobil will be different. That's it for Excel module number 5. Best of luck, and I will see you again in Excel module number 6.